Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the United States has seen North Korean troops in Russia training. Austin called the situation very serious. And joining us now, Carl Friedhoff with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs and an expert on East Asia international relations. Carl, thanks for being with us. I know you were based in Seoul, so your perspective is going to be very helpful here. This would be a significant escalation in Ukraine. Can you establish where the evidence is that North Korean troops are preparing to go into Ukraine?
Well, in terms of what the evidence is, we've seen that come out of the National Intelligence Service in South Korea. We've seen that come out of Ukraine independently. And now the United States has said that it has also verified that. So I think, with those three combined, it's very likely and certainly that they are there. The question really is what they're going to be doing. The fact that there are about 3,000 troops on the ground now, there are estimates that may eventually grow to 10,000 to 12,000. Those really aren't game-changing numbers when you put that into the context of Russia having almost 500,000 soldiers on the front lines of Ukraine. So they may be looking at how to deal with combat experience. There may be some of that going on, but my guess is that they're going to be looking more at how to train with drones, how to train with more advanced weaponry that they may not have access to in North Korea. And also they're going to be looking at the interoperability and how they work with a partner like Russia. That's something that North Korean soldiers have not experienced and suggests that they may be preparing to better operate with Russia as they square off with South Korea.
So it sounds like you think it would be maybe more of not necessarily a public relations thing, but more of a support sort of situation. Is that how you'd describe it?
That would be my guess. My assumption is that these are relatively high-level troops that North Korea doesn't want to just throw their lives away, as Russia has done with so many of its low-level troops. I'm sure if fighting comes their way, they will certainly contribute and participate in that, and we will see North Korean casualties. But my guess is that these are high-level troops, and they're going to be more focused on the training aspect of this, because then they can carry those lessons back to North Korea to improve their military at home.
Yeah, Putin and Kim Jong-un are allies here. The Kremlin said this is fake news. How is NATO responding? How about the United States and its allies?
The U.S. response, I think, is largely going to have its hands tied. There's very little that I see that it can do. It's not going to commit U.S. troops or NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine for this. They can potentially go to the United Nations Security Council, but there China and Russia have a veto. There's very little they can do in the way of sanctions that can actually be implemented. And so, yes, we'll see kind of a list of reactions and potential actions coming forward out of the Department of Defense and the White House. But my guess is that many of those actions won't make much difference. And instead, what we'll see the United States do is pivot to focus on military exercises with South Korea and then pull Japan into that relationship. That's a relationship that Joe Biden has really focused on during his time as president. And it's a relationship that has really grown in terms of its depth of cooperation.
What does this partnership say about Russia's ability to wage its attack on Ukraine? It sounds, frankly, desperate.
I'm not so concerned about their attempt to wage war in the sense that they still have plenty of soldiers. The real key for them is to keep the ammunition and artillery flowing from North Korea. That is really kind of key for their aspects or the prospects of continuing to fight Ukraine. When all is said and done, I think we'll see more information about how this came about. I actually won't be that surprised to learn that this was actually done at the request of North Korea. North Korea is probably looking for a way to get its troops on the ground to advance its training. And again, as I mentioned, looking at ways to cooperate and work with Russia in terms of that training piece and then carrying those lessons back to North Korea.
We'll see how this all ends. Carl Friedhoff with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Thanks very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.